Ottawa's announced it is banning Huawei from its 5G networks. The government will also ban ZTE, that's another Chinese company. The Liberals had been delaying this decision for more than 3 years as, of course, relations between Canada and China deteriorated. American officials have alleged that allowing Huawei in could allow the Chinese government to interfere with 5G networks. Now, China is responding to the telecom bans. A spokesperson for the Chinese embassy in Canada issued a statement saying the decision has produced, quote, strong dissatisfaction. It also suggests Canada is working with the U.S. to suppress Chinese companies. Let's get more into this right now with Ian Lee, an associate professor at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Ian, Canada took a while to sort of come around to getting around to Huawei. It seems like we sort of had a pretty legitimate excuse for why, but does that matter now?
Notwithstanding the rhetoric of the government of China, and which is, let's be clear, it's somewhat self-interested. They're trying to say that this is only being done because we're being told to by the U.S. That's not the full accurate story. The so-called Five Eyes partnership or alliance, which is the U.S. and the U.K. and New Zealand and Australia and Japan and Taiwan, have all already banned them years ago, 3 years ago. We were the very last one to do so. Likewise, Europe has done it through the back door, banned Huawei by saying you must be an ally to sell the 5G equipment. So we're the very last nation to ban them. It was inevitable, I argue, albeit very late, because we are partners with these countries. We have partnership trade agreements, for example, with the U.S. and with Europe. So I think that this is more rhetoric and posturing. I think the Chinese knew that the government of China knew that this decision was coming.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, and of course, the hiccup, of course, seemed to be the fact that Meng Wanzhou, Huawei arrest here in Canada, and then, of course, the two Michaels being held in captivity in China for so long under such horrific circumstances as well. The government seemed to have to be sort of towing this line here. So, Ian, you kind of seem to be alluding to it. Canada really knew this ultimately was going to be the inevitable decision, but it took us a while to get here. Does that harm our relations ultimately, though, with our allies, that it took so long, or do they perhaps cut Canada any slack based on the tenuous circumstances surrounding the two Michaels, for example?
I'm not privy to the inner machinations, I assure you, in the White House or the other partners, but I think that they did understand because it was so internationally reported and covered. I'm talking about the arrest of Ms. Meng, the CFO of Huawei, 3-4 years ago. And then, of course, the Chinese government retaliated by arresting the two Michaels. This was widely understood by everyone around the world. So I think that they cut us some slack. But to your larger question, I think the Chinese have come around, the government of China has come around. Only 2 days ago, they rescinded the ban on canola imports from Canada. So I think I don't want to say we're returning to business as usual. I think we're going to be moving into a different relationship where technology-sensitive products are not going to be sold. It won't just be Huawei and 5G. We're not going to allow exports increasingly because the U.S. is going in that direction, and we're not going to allow them to sell to us. Having said that, let's call it low tech, and that's not to be pejorative about agriculture. We are leading producers of very high quality products. I think we're going to continue to sell agricultural products to China.
Okay, Ian, perhaps this is a very important question just at the consumer level as well here, because we know that some Canadian network carriers have already installed, Huawei technology. Now they're being told they've got to get rid of it at their own cost by 2024. It seems likely, and you, as a professor of business, you probably understand this better than most of us, that the costs of that is likely going to be passed down to you and me, people who rely on this technology, rely on these cell phones, or will they eat it themselves?
Nick, I think they're going to pass it on. I talk about this in my classes every year and in some of my discussions with journalists. There's no pot of gold in the basement of any company, whether it's a bank or a pharmaceutical company or a telecom company. There's no sort of hidden, and I worked in a bank for 9 years, many years ago. There's no hidden vaults in the basement where they can go down and retrieve billions of dollars of spare, gold or Bitcoin or something. Their costs are passed on. So that's what businesses do. They acquire costs called labor, called inputs. They produce a finished product or a service, which they sell to us. So these costs, which will be in the hundreds of millions, if not low billions of dollars, will eventually be passed on to us as the ultimate consumers of the services.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks for explaining that. Listen, Ian Lee, always good to talk to you, Associate Professor at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton. Good chat this morning. Thanks, Ian.
My pleasure. Thank you.